Blow that kush like a gun. I got brick fat on me right now, and I blow it. 40 rack stuff down in my denim, I blow it. Take a gram of kush and roll it in a blunt.
Wide receivers, my top wide receiver is Courtland Sutton. If you didn't pay attention and you said, hey, I'm going to watch the bowl game, that was a terrible depiction of Courtland Sutton. That was a terrible depiction of SMU just on the year. But Courtland Sutton is an absolute beast. They double covered him a lot of the year. I think he's the number one receiver. DJ Moore is my number two. I think he's the top slot receiver. Sutton is like your typical X. He's big and he's a possession type receiver. DJ Moore is your more speedy type. I know this comparison is kind of similar because they kind of go to the same school, but he does remind me of Stephon Diggs in a bit. I think he could be that same type of player in an offense. Calvin Ridley at 3. Maybe not utilized as much at Alabama because, they run the ball very heavy, but I think, he's going to be a really good player in the league. Simi Cobbs, another possession-type receiver. Anthony Miller is a guy that I have been high on for about 2 years now. I really like Anthony Miller. I'm glad that, he's looked at as a top receiver by some other guys too. He's one of my favorite guys. He's kind of like your Odell type. The fact that he's really not that tall. Odell's not big at all. He's not big at all, but he gets the ball. He balls every time he's out there. I like him a lot. Christian Kirk's the guy that people are really high on. I don't like he's a top 10 guy. He's 6 on my list. He's definitely a really good player, but he's not, I don't know, the praise that he gets, his production last year was not that great because he was praised as one of the top 2 guys. Him and Calvin Ridley were kind of top 2 guys throughout the year. And he's a good player, don't get me wrong, I just don't see it. But I got him at 6. Michael Gallup out of Colorado State as a guy that is really impressive all year. I really like him. He had some games early in the year against Alabama, Colorado, which he was getting to play against top cornerbacks that are in the draft too. He played pretty good against them, and obviously he shit on his in conference play. His first game, I can't remember who they played, but they shit all over them. He had a really huge game. Traquan Smith was kind of an unknown guy going into the year, but I really was impressed with him throughout the year in that UCF team. There's a lot of guys that emerged off of UCF that throughout the year that we really didn't know about. When we talk about him and then Jordan Adkins and Shaq Griffin, those type guys really impressed throughout the year. There's a couple other ones I can't think of, but the Killings kid in their backfield was really good, but I think he's only a junior, so he's going to come back next year. James Washington was kind of a top guy going into it, and he looks really fast. And he's kind of a guy that just I think is a product of his type of offense. So I had to bring him down. He was one of my top guys, coming into the year. But I had to bring him down. His 40 time at the combine, really, it really wasn't that fast to think about how fast he is. He's not that tall. You would think he'd be a little bit faster. Jamon Moore, one of my favorite things about the combine is the gauntlet. I really, if they just roll through that gauntlet like crazy and just look really good, those are the guys that I really like. Jamon Moore really helped himself out. I had him a little bit lower on my list, and I moved him up to 10 after that. And he's a guy that was kind of high at the first year, and for some reason he kind of dropped down boards throughout it. But he's a guy I really like. Trey Quinn, I think he's the best route runner. I think this is I think if you let this guy fall to the Patriots, you're looking at the next Julian Edelman, Amendola type. I really like Trey Quinn. He's not going to kill you. His combine stuff's not going to blow you away. He's not going to be super fast, but he's a guy that because he's not as talented, he's going to have to run really good routes, and he already does that. So I like Trey Quinn a lot. He's at 11. Maybe a little high compared to comparing athleticism to these other guys, but the fact that he's probably going to be on a team that he's going to be a Cooper Kupp type player. I really like Trey Quinn. Marcel Aitman, This is a guy that kind of was overshadowed throughout the year by James Washington, but he may end up being a better prospect than James Washington. I have him at 12. He ran a pretty good 40 time for being 6'3", 6'4". I like him. Alan Lazar. This is a guy that just when he's on the field, he's just balling. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. Jaleel Scott honestly surprised me in the Gauntlet. He looked really good in the Gauntlet. This is a guy that came up late. He was New Mexico State. I didn't get to see a whole lot of film on him throughout the year. So he's a guy I had to kind of do some work at the end, and I really do like him. He's really tall. I think he can be a good player. DJ Chalk, he was a guy that I had in like the 30s or 40s, and I moved him up to 15. He had the best 40 time. He looked great in the Gauntlet, and I did hear the talk that, he is a guy that, you can't really judge him by his film at LSU because LSU doesn't throw the ball. LSU doesn't really ever have a quarterback. So it's really hard to gauge them. And so I moved him up to 15. Kiki Kuti out of Texas Tech. I think he's going to be a great slot receiver. I have him at 16. Jake Wieneke, I have at 17. I could see Jake Wieneke moving to tight end, though, honestly, with his size and his speed really wasn't that good. But at the same time, he could be a big-time possession receiver in the NFL also. Bryce Bobo, he's a guy that wasn't at the Combine, but he's a guy that I really like. He's got good height. I think he can be like a Y type. And when I say Y, he's not at the X, he's not a slot. So when I say Y, he's just like he can run the deep routes and get possession, but at the same time, he can go over the middle and catch stuff over the middle. I know I already said Stephon Diggs, but Stephon Diggs is a perfect example of a guy that can do both. And it's really funny when I've thought about it too, and like if you think about it, Mohamed Sanu, I don't know what I was saying. Mohamed Sanu is a guy that he's considered a Y, but you would think he would be an X with his height. But because they have Julio Jones at the X, he plays the Y, and he really excels because all the coverage on Julio, and so to me, he's not the prototypical Y, but like you got to understand if one of these guys gets on a team, if they already have the X, they're going to be moved to the Y, and they're probably going to excel at the Y. And the Y has to be able to run the deep routes. He has to be able to run the stuff over the middle. Y may be the most critical type receiver the X is the most important to have, but critically, if you don't have a good wide receiver, this is when you find that your offense becomes stagnant, because if they can just double your X, and then they have the ability to put like a safety on your slot, or another cornerback on your slot, your Y has to be the guy to really get out there and kill it. And then, obviously, if you have a Z, that's good. That helps. Ray McCloud, really impressed with him. His gauntlet looked good. His 40 time looked good. He's a speedy guy. But other than that, I moved him up a little bit. Ray McCloud at 19. Deshaun Hamilton at 20. I like Deshaun Hamilton. I think he's going to be a good player in the league. Cedric Wilson out of Boise State. I like him a lot. Cam Phillips, Virginia Tech. I don't really know why this kid wasn't at the Combine. Maybe he was. Maybe he just didn't want to run or whatever. But I like Cam Phillips a lot. He broke a couple records at Virginia Tech. So I have him at 22. Darren Carrington, he was originally at Oregon, transferred to Utah. Had a pretty good year at Utah. I was impressed with some of the things that I saw in the Combine from him. Stephen Ishmael, a guy from Syracuse. I like Stephen Ishmael. He had a really big year. They throw the ball a lot, though, so his stats may be a little bit better than you thought. Deion Kane at 25. I'm not as high on Deion Kane as others. I see, what DeAndre Hopkins has done, but like every year they bring a guy out. And I feel like because they didn't really have that big like X-type receiver for Clemson this year, Deion Kane was that guy, and like they're just like it's so easy to be like, oh well, Sammy Watkins really hadn't been that good, but Sammy Watkins, and then DeAndre Hopkins, and then Mike Watkins Mike Watkins is I think what his name is. or Mike Williams is his name. Never mind. So it's just like every year they have this guy, so it's like they think they're going to get another one, and I don't think Deion Kane's going to be the same quality of these guys. And I will say, Sammy Watkins coming out of college may have been the most impressive one of those three that I just mentioned. Irvin Phillips, I didn't see him at the combine, but I really like him. He's another Syracuse guy. These two guys at Syracuse, Ishmael and Phillips, if you watch film on them, holy shit, these kids look good. So I like them. I can't say his first name. St. Brown from Notre Dame. Equanimeous, I don't even know how to say it. That shit's ridiculous. St. Brown, I think he's going to be a pretty good receiver in the league. He was impressive at times. He's a guy that the last 2 years has been a pretty good player for Notre Dame at the wide receiver position. So I like St. Brown. He's at 27. Antonio Caldwell, kind of a hard grade since we didn't get to see anything from him this year, but he did really good in the gauntlet. He had a good 40 time. He's a smaller guy, so he'll be able to play slot. I like Callaway at 28. Auden Tate. I like Auden Tate, but there's just so many other X's that I would take over Auden Tate. So I got Auden Tate at 29. The Rice Fountain out of Northern Iowa, maybe a little bit of an unknown. He played in one of those like Senior Bowl or one of those type games, and I think he had a pretty good game. But he's a guy I saw playing at Northern Iowa, and I was really impressed with him. I have him at 30. Richie James at 31. Richie James had a shoulder or a collarbone injury last year, so we didn't get to really see a lot of him. But he was a guy that's pretty highly touted the year before that. Dante Pettis, maybe a little low for Dante Pettis, but I don't know why, but I mean, maybe as a punt returner, to me, he seems too tall to even return punts. I don't even know how he was good of a punt returner as he was. I think Washington had a really good special teams. I think that's what really helped him. And yeah, he has the record and whatnot. So, you have to give him his respect, but I'm not big on Dante Pettis. I think he could be good, but I just don't think he's a physical enough wide receiver to put him higher on this list. Shea Fields out of Colorado. I really like those Colorado wide receivers. So Shea Fields at 33. Caleb Woods, maybe a little bit of an unknown out of Florida Atlantic. I like Caleb Woods. Cam Sims. This is a guy that really didn't get to play a whole lot during the year. He was kind of, he's kind of behind some of those other guys. Cam Sims out of Alabama. I like him. Emmanuel Butler from Northern Arizona. Another kid I really like. Karan White. I like Karan White. I just his way his brother's been injured throughout his career. I can't put him that much higher, and I mean, he may prove me wrong, but he's at 37. Tavares Martin had a really bad 40 time. He looks quick. He's got good hands, and I know Tavares Martin can play. I saw him play all year for Washington State. I really liked him, but just stacking up, he's 38 for me. Quandre Henderson. Quandre Henderson is a Tyreek Hill type player. He's not a guy that's going to go first, second round. He may be a third, fourth, fifth rounder, and he's just going to get on a team, and he's going to get put in the right position, and he can do the same thing that Tyreek Hill does. Corey Robertson was a guy that kind of climbed up draft boards throughout the year, and his combine was not that impressive. He really didn't do that good in the gauntlet, and I don't know. I kind of gave him respect because I did watch his film, and his film looked pretty good. He looks like a big physical wide receiver, but I wasn't that impressed with him at the combine. Deontay Burnett, slot type from USC. Wyatt Demps, pretty tall receiver out of Nevada. Braxton Berrios he just does production. He's your Trey Quinn type, your slot, your little slot that runs really good routes. He's not as talented as the other guys. I got him at 43. 44, Elijah Marks out of Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona is a team that throws the ball a lot. They have this kid named Connor, I think it's Case Cookus, and I think that kid's going to be a stud for the NFL draft next year. He can sling the ball, but they throw the ball a lot at Northern Arizona. So these guys may be a little be looking good because of the amount of times they could get the ball thrown to them. But Elijah Marks out of Northern Arizona, Jalon Acklin, a white boy. I have him at 45 out of Western Illinois. Really impressed with him. I think he could be a good Y. Drew Batchelor out of Weber State. I have at 46, slot type. He's just like the Berrios, just like Quinn type. Keith Kirkwood, pretty tall guy, out of Temple. Javon Wims. Javon Wims had good games throughout the year, but I really couldn't. I didn't really ever fall in love with him, and I think some people may have him higher on boards, but I just don't. I just don't see. I mean, I think he can be a good player, but I just don't see. There's other guys that I'd rather have than him. Jester Way, he was a guy that I kind of had lower on my list before, but his combine was really good. He ran a good 40 time. He looked good in the gauntlet, so he didn't do anything but help himself out. Martez. I think it's Martez Valdez Scantling from South Florida. He was a guy I really wasn't high on. I don't even think he was in my top 100. And he came to the combine and he ran like a 4.37, and he's 6'3". So I was really impressed with that. He looked good in the gauntlet. I had to put him on my list. He's at 50. Stephen Mitchell, slot type out of USC. Brian Pringle, I think Brian Pringle should have stayed another year out of Kansas State. He's going to go to a team and he'll be good, but I think he should have stayed one more year. Amani Foreman, his brother is Dante Foreman. That's at Houston. He'll be a good player in this league. I like him. Ricky June, he's a guy that it's kind of hard to It's really hard to judge Georgia Tech wide receivers, but the one thing that you can take from them is they're really good blockers because they block a lot. So I think Ricky June can get on a team and be a good player. Garrett Johnson out of Kentucky, another good player. Justin Watson, maybe a little bit of an unknown white boy out of Penn. I like him. Stephen Dunbar. I was really higher on Stephen Dunbar and like Linnell Bonner like last year, and they didn't really impress me that much this year. And I know they didn't have as good of a quarterback, so that's tough. But I have Dunbar at 57. Yedaliah Lewis out of Sam Houston State. Really, really like this kid. I think he's going to be a really good slot receiver. He's a guy that you probably won't have to draft because he played at Sam Houston State. He's kind of an unknown type, but I really like him. Trent Sherfield out of Vanderbilt. He's a good player. Austin Pro. His dad was in the league. He was injured most of the year. I think he could be a really good player. He was good, 2 years ago with Mitch Trubisky when he had a quarterback. They had Ryan Switzer too, so he's a little bit overshadowed by Switzer, but he had a good year. Linnell Bonner, like I said, at 61. Thomas Owens out of Florida International. I think he was hurt most of the year. I like him. Jordan Lashley, I think he definitely helped himself out. He looked pretty good at the combine, but I still have him at 63. Brant Van Rockel, this kid played at South Dakota, a big unknown, but this kid can ball. I like him a lot. Anthony Mahangu, I can't say his name, but this dude is lanky as hell, real tall. He impressed me throughout the year at Purdue. Purdue definitely Purdue's best receiver throughout the year. Reggie Bonnafon is just an athlete. He started off as a quarterback at Louisville, and then Lamar Jackson took over. But I like him. I think he can. I put him on my list at 66. Janarian Grant out of Rutgers, maybe an unknown type. I like him. Adonis Jennings at 68 from Temple. Devin Ross from Colorado at 69. Saeed Blacknell at 70. Dylan Cantrell, he was actually at the combine. He was honestly pretty impressive. I didn't really move him up a lot, though. I still have him at 71. Ryan Marcus, I don't even know if this guy is wanting to get drafted. When I look on the internet to see if this guy is even I don't see him on anybody's list, and maybe he's just that much of an unknown. But I watched this game early in the year when Eastern Kentucky played Kentucky, and this kid was balling on Kentucky. So he was a guy that I wrote down like a way long time ago, and I just don't see him anywhere on any lists or anything. But I like him. Chris Lacey was actually at the combine. He didn't necessarily impress or anything, but he's a good talent, just overshadowed by Washington and Aitman, and they had Jalen McCleskey too, so he was just overshadowed. Jalen Tolliver out of Arkansas, Monticello, I think it is. Pretty good player. Saw a little film on him, though. Preston Smith, saw a little film on him at 75. Jonathan Duart from Old Dominion, a guy I like. Devontae Boyd, UNLV. Devon Grayson, he was at the combine. I think he helped himself out at the combine a little bit. He was injured last year. He played some this year. Russell Gage, I have at 79 from LSU. RJ Udowski, kind of a slot little guy. from North Dakota State that I like. Bryce Wilkerson, big unknown. This guy was at a D3, Mary Hardin Baylor. I like Bryce Wilkerson a lot. This kid can return kicks, really good player. JT Looper from Central Oklahoma, unknown guy. Quay Johnson, East Carolina. Tio Redding, pretty tall guy. I think if he gets, I don't know, he's not going to get drafted, but if he gets on a team like a practice squad, I think he can impress some people. Jordan Ganty, Murray State. Notorious Font, Western Kentucky. I added him to my list late. Saw a couple good games from him at Western Kentucky. John Diars from TCU. Donald Gray, Mississippi State. Gary Brown from it's a Division II California school. Or it's California, but it's Division II. It's not like Cal. Devontae Dedman from William and Mary. Taj Williams, TCU. Sergio Bailey from Eastern Michigan. Cody Thompson from Toledo. Robert Foster. I don't like Robert Foster. He jumps a lot on his catches, and he's going to get destroyed if he does that in the NFL. Dion Dowling out of Virginia. Mikael Holder. Mikael Holder had a couple of pretty good games early in the year. I didn't see as much of him as the year went on, but I wrote him on my list way early in the year. I have him at 96. Alize Staggers, I have him at 97. He's from Southern Miss, and he just doesn't look big enough to be able to block. He's really small. Jazz Peavy, slot type. He didn't really get to play this year, but he played really well in 2017. Jordan Villeman from Oregon State. He's really tall. He's 6'4". Darren Andrews and this kid named Darren Andrews out of UCLA, and then this kid Regis Sabosu out of Montreal College. I think he plays Canadian football or something like that. And he was at the Senior Bowl or something. I add him to the list. He seems like he could be a pretty good player. But yeah, that's my wide receivers. Wide receivers that I really like: Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore, Anthony Miller, Calvin Ridley. Simi Cobbs is another guy I really like. Michael Gallup, Tremont Smith, Trey Quinn, Jamon Moore, Marcel Aitman, Alan Lazard, Jalil Scott, DJ Chalk. Definitely probably helped himself out the most at the Combine. Ray McLeod, Bryce Bobo, Jake Winicky, Deshaun Hamilton are some guys that I really like. Stephen Ishmael. Antonio Caldwell helped himself a lot at the Combine too. But wide receivers is one of my favorite positions that they're
Got campaign going so strong. Get brain while I'm talking on the phone. Spend money when your mind is slow. Real street niggas ain't no clowns. We at the top where we belong. Brand Lee Rose ain't for song. Smoking off dollar, I'm strong. When the club out of here this time. We got rest on rest on rest.